Essentially, we outsourced our policy for COVID death reporting metrics to the World Health Organization. We did not create it here in Australia. I'm going to show you a little bit about what I'm talking about, what I mean by that. So here we go. This is an official World Health Organization document. If you'd like me to send it to you, go to mcjreport.com, click on the join our newsletter button in the top right hand corner, and I'll send it to you tomorrow. It's really important to understand this stuff. This can't be conflated with tinfoil hat conspiracy theories or tinfoil hat brigade, which is something that a term that Luke Cornelius coined. And that was, I think, shortly before he referred to himself as a dog returning to eat its own vomit. Who here remembers Luke Cornelius referring to himself as a dog? If you remember, say aye. All right. World Health Organization, international guidelines for certification and classification of COVID-19 as cause of death. That's right. Adopted by Australia, which I can show you through the Australian Bureau of Statistics website. All right. Just so you know that I'm not just making stuff up. Let's have a look at this. All right. I've got some points highlighted. Definition for deaths due to COVID-19. This is an official WHO document, all right? A death due to COVID-19 is defined for surveillance purposes as a death resulting from a clinically compatible illness. In a probable, so like probably that guy died from COVID, or confirmed COVID-19 case. Confirmed as in there was a positive PCR test result. I don't know. What exactly does confirmed mean? It says, unless there is a clear alternative cause of death that cannot be related to COVID, for example, trauma. So some guy produces a positive PCR test, drives his car off a cliff. It's safe to say that he died due to falling off the cliff, not from COVID. That's what I'm hearing here. Put your thoughts in the comments. It says here, there should be no period of complete recovery from COVID-19 between illness and death. All right, as a reporting metric. The UK actually made it public. They were shortening the window to 30 days from a positive PCR test. Goes on to say, a death due to COVID-19 may not be attributed to another disease. All right, may not be attributed to another disease, for example, cancer. So what does that mean? Does that mean that if somebody is terminally ill with cancer and they produce a positive PCR test result, then their death can, quote, not be attributed to another disease, even though they were terminally ill? What if somebody's in palliative care and they've only got a few months to live and they produce a positive PCR test result? Can their terminal illness not be the cause of death? Must the cause of death be attributed to COVID because that person had a positive PCR test? I mean, I'm just asking the question here. What do you think? Maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't. Maybe it's a question that you should be asking your friends and family around the dinner table. Because we got to keep talking about this, because most Australians, they don't understand the guidelines for COVID death reporting. They just see the media, they're like, oh my God, there's 300 cases. Oh my God, there's 10 deaths. What do I do? I know what I'll do. I'll wear a mask and I'll do whatever the government tells me to do. And if the government asks me to jump, my only question is, how high? All right. So it says here, may not be attributed to another disease and should be counted independently of pre-existing conditions that are suspected of triggering a severe course of COVID-19. All right, so counted independently of pre-existing conditions, and a death due to COVID-19 may not be attributed to another disease, for example, cancer. Ladies and gentlemen, what can you say? All right, it goes on to say here, guidelines for certifying COVID-19 as a cause of death. In view of COVID-19, it is important to record and report deaths due to COVID-19 in a uniform way. All right, so that's the reasoning behind why all these countries around the world, instead of formulating their own policy on recording COVID deaths, they have adopted the policy of the World Health Organization so that it can, quote, be in a uniform way. All right, it says here, COVID-19 should be recorded on the medical certificate of cause of death for all decedents where the disease caused or is, you gotta love this part, assumed to have caused or contributed to death. All right, so assumed to have caused. So there was no positive PCR test result, but Joe Schmo had a sore throat, a runny nose, symptoms that were consistent with COVID. In that case, assumed to have caused. There's actually a document from the Western Australian Coroner's Court which corroborates this statement right here. All right, so yeah, there's a bit more in it in this document. Head on over to mcjreport.com, put your email address in, and I'll send it out to you. Now, just to show you, this is from abs.gov.au, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, coding of COVID-19 from the MCCD, which stands for Medical Certification of Cause of Death. It says here, Australian cause of death data is coded to the International Classification of Diseases 10th revision, which is governed by not you and I, the Australian people, by the World Health Organization. It says here, case definitions, certification guidelines, and coding rules have been implemented for, quote, international use. A death directly due to COVID-19 is defined by the World Health Organization as a death, quote, resulting from a clinically compatible illness in a probable or confirmed COVID-19 case, unless there's a clear alternative of death that cannot be related to the COVID-19 disease. All right, so verbatim, we can search for it right here on the page, verbatim from the World Health Organization document. So I think this really explains how the media and governments around the world have been so incredibly quick to attribute people's deaths to COVID-19, because they're following the death reporting metrics from the World Health Organization, which, as you can see, leave plenty of scope for attributing people's deaths to COVID, especially if they have produced a positive PCR test, but also scope for attributing deaths to COVID even in the absence of a positive PCR test. All right. In saying that, disclaimer, I'm not saying that people who were reported to have died from COVID, I'm not saying they didn't die from COVID. Maybe they did. I'm just simply outlaying what's going on here. I'm just highlighting the documents that are used. So maybe if you've got your own thoughts about this, go ahead and put your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the average Australian is aware of this information? If not, why not? Maybe you can share this broadcast with them. Again, mcjreport.com. Sign up for my free newsletter. I'll send this all out to you tomorrow. This is really basic stuff. This is like 1 + 1 = 2 information in relation to COVID and COVID deaths. You know, we're not going down the rabbit hole of the Freemasons or that sort of thing or anything like that. We're just looking at information that's publicly available to us.